sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The second of our loud salawats for the love of Amir al-Mu'mineen Imam Ali ibn Abu Talib alayhi salam. The third of our loud salawats for the love of Sayyidina Nisa al-Alamin Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. And the loudest of our salawats for the love of Sahib al-Asr Zaman alayhi salam. I begin in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. All praise belongs to Him and Him alone. May He send His blessings on Muhammad and on the household of Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Today is a very sad day. We lose our 9th holy Imam and the 11th of the 14 holy Ma'asumeen. We lose today Imam Muhammad aljawad alayhi salam. He was martyred at the age of 25 on the 29th of Zulqa'adah in the 220th year of Hijrah. He was poisoned by Mu'tasim the Abbasid Khalifa and is now buried next to his grandfather Imam Musa al-Qadim alayhi salam. Therefore, in this lecture, we will try to examine Imam Muhammad al-Jawad alayhi salam's childhood. Secondly, we will observe his imamat. Then thirdly, we will observe his literary attainments and excellence. And fourthly, we will examine his migration to Iraq. And inshallah, lastly, we will briefly examine his martyrdom. Therefore, in his childhood, Imam Jawad alayhi salam was brought up by his father for 4 years. Under the force of circumstances, his father, Imam Ali Rada alayhi salam, had to migrate from Medina to Khorasan, leaving his young son behind him. The Imam was fully aware of the treacherous character of the ruling king and was sure that he would not return to Medina. So before his departure from Medina, he declared his son, Imam Muhammad al-Jawad alayhi salam, to be his successor and imparted to him all his stores of divine knowledge and spiritual genius. Now as for Imam Jawad alayhi salam's imamat, it began at the 17th of Safar, when his father, Imam Ali Rada alayhi salam, had been poisoned. From that day, Imam Jawad alayhi salam was commissioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hold the responsibility of imamat. At the tender age of 8, there was no apparent chance or means of the young Imam reaching great heights of knowledge. But after a few days, he was known not only to have debated with his fellow contemporary scholars on subjects pertaining hadith and tafsir and etc., and outwitted them, but he exhorted their administration and acknowledgements of his learning and superiority. Right from then, the world realized that he indeed possessed divine knowledge, and that the knowledge commanded by the holy Imams was not acquired, rather it was granted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now as for his literary attainments and excellence, you find that the lifespan of Imam Muhammad al-Jawad alayhi salam was shorter than that of his predecessors as well as his successors. Yet his literary attainments were many, and he commanded great respect and esteem. The holy Imam was the symbol of Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's affallibility and Imam Ali alayhi salam's attainments. His hereditary qualities comprised of humbleness, boldness, charity, forgiveness, tolerance, and much, much more. The brightest and most outstanding phases of his nature and character were to show hospitality and courtesy to all, without discrimination, to help the needy, to observe equality under all circumstances, to live a simple life, to help the orphans, the poor, and the homeless, to impart learning to those interested in the acquisition of knowledge and guide the people to the right path. Now as for Imam Jawad alayhi salam's migration to Iraq, you find that for the consolidation of his empire, it was realized by Ma'mun al-Ain that it was necessary to win the sympathy and support of the Iranians, who had always been friendly towards the Ahl al-Bayt. Consequently, Ma'mun was forced from a political point of view to establish contacts with the Ahl al-Bayt at the expense of the ties with Bani Abbas, and thereby win the favor of the Shi'as. Accordingly, he declared Imam Ali Rada alayhi salam as his heir even against the Imam's will, and got his sister Habiba married to him. Ma'mun expected that Imam Rada alayhi salam would lend him his support in political affairs of the state. But when he discovered the masses were more and more submitting themselves towards the spiritual greatness of Imam Ali Rada alayhi salam, he got him poisoned. Yet the requirements which directed him to nominate Imam Ali Rada alayhi salam as his successor still continued. Hence, he desired to marry his daughter to Imam Jawad alayhi salam. With this object in view, he summoned the Imam from Medina to Iraq. The Bani Abbas were extremely disconcerted when they came to know that Ma'mun was planning to marry his daughter to Imam Jawad alayhi salam. A delegation of some leading persons waited on him in order to dissuade him from his intention. But Ma'mun continued to admire the learning and excellence of the Imam. He would say that although the Imam was still young, yet he was a true successor to his father in all his virtues, and that the profoundest scholars of the Islamic world could not compete with him. When the Abbasids noticed this, that Ma'mun attributed the Imam's superiority to his learning, they chose Yahya ibn Aqsam, the greatest scholar and juror of Baghdad, to contend with him. Ma'mun organized a grand meeting for the contest, which resulted in a huge gathering of people from all parts of the kingdom. Apart from noble and high officials, there were as many as 900 chairs reserved for scholars and learned men only. The world wondered how a young man could contest with the veteran judge in religious laws and the greatest scholars of Iraq. Imam Jawad alayhi salam was seated beside Ma'mun on his throne face to face with Yahya ibn Aqsam, who addressed the Imam by saying, "Do you permit me to ask you a question?" The Imam replied by "Ask me whatever you wish," in the typical tone of his ancestors. Yahya then asked the Imam, "What is your verdict about a man who indulges in the hunting while he is in a state of ihram?" Therefore the Imam replied by saying, "Your question is vague and misleading. You should have definitely mentioned whether the hunter was within the jurisdiction of the Kaaba or outside, whether he was literate or illiterate, whether he was a slave or a free citizen, whether he was a minor or a major, whether it was the first time or had he done it previously, also whether that victim was a bird or some other creature, whether it was at day or night, whether he hunted, whether he repented for his actions or persisted in it, whether the hunter did it secretly or openly, whether the ihram was for Umrah or for Hajj. Unless all of these points are explained, no specific answer can be given to this question." Yahya was in disbelief. He was shocked in listening to these words of the Imam, and the entire gathering was in awe. There was no limit to Ma'mun's pleasure. He expressed his sentiments of joy and admiration. As Ma'mun al-Ain wanted that the Imam's opponents be fully exposed, he said, "You may also put some questions to Yahya ibn Aqsam." Then Yahya also reluctantly said to the Imam, "Yes, you may ask me a question. If I know the answer, I will tell it. Otherwise, I shall request you to give its answer." Thereupon the Imam asked the question to which Yahya could not reply. Eventually the Imam answered his question, and then Ma'mun addressed the audience by saying, "Did I not say that the Imam comes of a family which has been chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a repository of knowledge and learning? Is there anyone in the world who can match even the children of this family?" All of them shouted, "Undoubtedly, there is no one parallel to Imam Jawad alayhi salam." At the same assembly, Ma'mun wedded his daughter to the Imam and liberally distributed charity and gifts among his subjects as a mark of rejoicing. 1 year after his marriage, he returned from Medina to Baghdad with his wife, and there he set about preaching the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then after the death of Ma'mun, Muttasim al-La'in ascended the throne. He got an opportunity to persecute the Imam and show spite and malice against him. He summoned the Imam to Baghdad. The Imam arrived in Baghdad on the 9th of Muharram on the 220th year of Hijrah. Mu'tasim then got him poisoned in the same year. He died on the 29th of Zulqa'dah and is buried beside his grandfather Imam Musa al-Qadim alayhi salam in the suburb of Baghdad. Therefore, we thank Imam Ali Rada, Imam Muhammad al-Jawad alayhi salam and all of the Ahlul Bayt, because they are the ones whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made obligatory to obey. Because in chapter 4 of the Quran, in verse 59, it says, "Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu atiya Allah wa atiya ar-rasula wa ulil amri minkum," meaning, "O you who believe, obey Allah and obey the messenger and those in authority, from authority with among you." Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.